The San Francisco Giants have played 63 games, and yesterday we talked about overall team performance in those 63 games and pointed out that it's not a tiny sample. And today we're going to dive into the individual players who make up those team numbers and evaluate this team 63 games into the season.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting Locked On Giants for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB, one word, for a first deposit match up to $100. And coming up on today's show, I have decided that what I want to do is, because I kind of wanted to do this yesterday, but there was simply no time, because it takes a full episode, honestly, is to get into the individual players behind what makes up the overall team performance. So without further delay, let's just jump right into it. So the Giants have played 63 games, like I said, and we're going to start with the hitters and kind of the offensive performance overall. This was a big point of emphasis, throughout much of the first part of the season was concern about the offense. It still gets, I think, a little bit undue concern, given that overall, by weighted runs created plus, the Giants are top 10 in Major League Baseball in terms of overall offense. And this number, and like I said, I mean, if I said this yesterday, if I told you the truth, which is that the Giants team batting average is 248, I think I would just venture to guess, I could be wrong, but a lot of people would say that's really bad. But 248, where does that leave them? That's ninth highest in baseball, just as an example. So we have to know what league average is in order to have an opinion about when you say, what is the Giants number? League average, batting average right now in Major League Baseball is 240, 240. The Giants are at 248, and that is ninth best. Giants on base percentage is 317, and that is actually eighth best. The league average on base percentage is 311. Giants at 317. So it's really the power that has been subpar. Their isolated power is at 136, and the league average isolated power is 148. So that's like the only thing here. Their strikeout rate has been good, and by good, I mean, let me be specific. They're 22nd highest, meaning, what is it, ninth lowest, at 20.9%. But like I said, I want to dig into, now that I've told you they've been above average offensively overall, who are the individual players who make this up? So we're going to make sure these are players with at least one plate appearance, so we're not counting, otherwise it gets all crowded with pitchers. And, their best hitter who has played a lot, it's hard to say because they've had so many injuries, but LaMonte Wade Jr. was just doing crazy things. He led the league in on-base percentage. If you set the minimum to, around where his number of plate appearances were, there was no one even within a mile of LaMonte Wade Jr. with a 470 on-base percentage. So losing him, he had already put up about 2 Fangraphs wins above replacement in 52 games. So if you multiply that by 3, that would be a, 6-win season, which is, puts you in the MVP conversation. That's the kind of performance we were seeing, not to say that he would have kept that up. But, they've lost him currently to an injury that's going to be about a month long, and it's already been about a week. So, at least around 3 more weeks is what we're looking at there. And just to kind of stick with the first base theme, because that's where Wade was playing, in his place, we've seen, Wilmer Flores. We've also seen a little bit of Trenton Brooks, who's played in 5 games. But Wilmer Flores, I can't even, I don't even see him. Oh, there he is. There he is. So Wilmer Flores this season hitting just 219 with a 295 on base, 311 slugging, has been about 22% below average offensively. And so that, he had a great season offensively last year. Projections continue to be really strong for him because 51 games is simply less important than his previous career track record. And so I would expect Flores to get it going. He did hit a grand slam and had some really hit the ball hard in the last game there in Arizona. So hopefully he can get it going with LaMonte Wade Jr. out. But it reminds me, we know Wilmer Flores. We've seen him year after year after year after year. And it just kind of makes me think of another guy, Jorge Soler, who has been, where do we find Jorge Soler? We find him hitting 215, 288 on base, 376 slugging. So that's not that kind of different overall than Flores. It's actually better than Flores, but it's felt like a big disappointment so far for Soler. But it just goes to show you, I feel like, and tell me if you disagree, but with Flores' struggles, you're just kind of yeah, he's struggling, but we know that the good performance is in there and that it should come out. But with a new player like Jorge Soler, when he's new to your team, you're like, what the heck is going on? And so if Flores gets a pass based on track record, Soler should get a pass. And when I say a pass, I mean we should expect performance to pick up. So despite all his struggles, Soler has been close to league average offensively. And yeah, I mean, definitely he has struggled big time, but he's also starting to swing the bat better. I think he hit a monster home run. He hit a rocket with the bases loaded that did turn into an out. But yeah, so Heliot Ramos also, we did a whole segment on him yesterday, has been perhaps the best story of the season so far for the Giants through 63 games. He's played in 26 games, but has hit 304, 407 on base, 511 slugging with good defense, and has overall been the Giants. Per plate appearance, he's been one of their very best players because he's only played in 26 games, and yet he's tied for 4th in terms of Fangraphs wins above replacement, even though he's played half the games of the guys above him. Patrick Bailey. We'll get to defense later, but Bailey has hit well too when he's missed a little bit of time with a couple stints on the concussion IL, but 287 average, 345 on base, 443 slugging. Super, super valuable. I mean, he's arguably their best position player. If he can continue, if we can look back at the end of the season and say he kept up anything like this level of offense, then this is a probably consistent all-star caliber player. And so Bailey coming around with the bat, which we saw flashes of for sure last year, is a big deal. And it's been great to see, and hopefully he can just stay healthy. He's just super important to this team. Matt Chapman has been streaky as he is, but overall has been one of their best players. Again, league average batting average is 240, and he's at 238. So he's been about average in that category. 313 on base is about league average as well, but a 410 slugging. So he's been above average with power, and overall a 110 weighted runs created plus, meaning 10% above average. And the expected numbers are significantly better for Chapman than his actual numbers offensively. And we'll get to defense later on. Thairo Estrada has been about what Thairo Estrada is, close to league average offensively, but has provided good defense. They've gotten some solid performance from guys like Tyler Fitzgerald, and Brett Wisely has been a pleasant surprise in 16 games, very pleasant surprise. Blake Sable did well in a brief stint here. Mike Yastrzemski has kind of been up and down, mostly mediocre at best, kind of. And the other, Casey Schmidt has done some good things when he's been up here with the bat. Surprisingly, not so much defensively. It's been a struggle for Austin Slater, who's missed a ton of time. Luis Matos was awesome for that 1 week, basically, but then went into a dreadful slump and has actually, by this Fangraphs wins above replacement, been essentially one of their very worst players, which is just funny. It goes to show you what can happen in small samples. And Marco Luciano also did some really good things offensively when he was healthy, actually leading the team in weighted runs created plus, but only in 10 games. So that kind of sums up the main characters for the Giants. Jung-Hoo Lee was showing really promising, kind of hitting the ball hard, hitting into some tough outs, not striking out a lot, making a ton of contact, but then is out for the season with the shoulder, whatever it ended up being, I forget. And Nick Ahmed also not hitting much, but the defense was there. Michael Conforto hitting well, but missed a lot of time, but is back now. So he's having a nice rebound season at the plate. And so that kind of sums up, like I said, the main characters for the Giants there on the offensive side. So coming up in just a minute, we're going to talk about the pitching, which has surprisingly been one of their worst attributes, if not their worst attribute. Yes, definitely. So I'll give you the numbers and the individual players on the starting pitchers and the relievers in just a minute. And before we get into it, today's episode is brought to you in part by Policy Genius. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 a year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Their proprietary technology makes it easy to compare personalized quotes and policies from top-rated insurers side by side. Policy Genius's team of licensed experts is here to answer questions, handle paperwork, and help you make decisions with confidence. They work for you, not for the insurance companies. From exploring coverage options to making policy adjustments as your life changes, Policy Genius is your advocate at every step. And Policy Genius is committed to your information remaining secure. Your security is their priority. They use industry-leading security practices to help keep your information safe. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonmlb or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonmlb. All right, as promised, we're going to look at the Giants pitching, which I keep pointing out. I don't know that it gets talked about much, but they're, like I said, that offensive number is solid, but the ERA is like bottom 5 in the league. So thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day, everydayers. Coming up on Monday, we're going to be breaking down this 3-game series in Texas facing the Rangers, defending World Series champions, but they have about the same record as the Giants. So we'll see how they line up. Giants obviously don't play the Rangers all that often. These days now, you play them every year. So I think it's the Giants' first time in this new Texas range. No, they went there in 2021 to play the Rangers. Anyway, that'll be coming up for you on Monday. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And a reminder that you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. So I want to get into the starting pitchers now that we've covered the offense. So the starting pitchers as a whole, just to kind of summarize before we jump into it, their ERA is 4.46, and that is 23rd in baseball. So that's not what we expected out of this staff. When you've got, I expected, I'll speak for myself, them to be one of the best in baseball. They still could be when all is said and done. And there's a lot of their starting staff has allowed collectively a 322 batting average on balls in play. The next closest team is at 307. So that's just when that's an enormous gap. That's a 15-point gap between the Giants and the next closest team. And so that to me is a luck indicator. It's just kind of a randomness thing for the most part, especially because the Giants infield defense, as we will see, has been pretty good. Like if you look at Matt Chapman and Nick Ahmed played a lot and Tyro Estrada, there's no reason, especially for a ground ball heavy pitching staff, the Giants starters are first in the league in ground ball rate, that they should be allowing a batting average on balls in play that is by far the highest in the league. The best team, or the teams with the best batting average on balls in play against them, are like 250. The Giants are at 322. So imagine, instead of 32% of balls in play being hits, it was only 25. I mean, that is a big difference, and it speaks to the ERA being what it is. And so when we look at the individual players, I mean, I'll just say, like, yeah, I mean, a lot of it has been, guys like Blake Snell hit the 406 batting average on balls in play against him. Mason Black. It's been a lot of like Mason Black, Ryan Walker when he made just one start. Dalton Jeffries and his one start. But those aren't going to skew the numbers really. Kyle Harrison has allowed a really high batting average on balls in play, as has Logan Webb even at 323. So really only Jordan Hicks and Keaton Wynn are around league average or better. Everyone else has been way worse than that. So they've had 9 players make starts, and actually 3 of those players, Eric Miller, Ryan Walker, and Dalton Jeffries, have pitched fewer than 5 innings in their starts combined. And so it's mostly been Jordan Hicks, Keaton Wynn, Logan Webb. Like in terms of innings, it's been Logan Webb by far number 1, Kyle Harrison number 2, Jordan Hicks number 3, and then Keaton Wynn and Blake Snell. And then we saw a little bit of Mason Black. But in terms of ERA, the Logan Webb has been Logan Webb. He's got an ERA of 2.95. He's just consistently in the low 3s, high 2s. That's just where he lives, like since 2021. His ERA since 2021, 3.06. Fielding independent pitching, 2.97. And this year, ERA 2.95. So it's just like Logan Webb doing Logan Webb things. The one thing is the batting average on balls in play is high, and the expected ERA is 4.77. And so that's a little bit disconcerting, but at the same time, I would just kind of assume that he's just going to continue to pitch like he's pitched since 2021, which is to say, as one of the best pitchers in baseball, not necessarily like a dominant strikeout machine. In fact, he's kind of average or a little below average in terms of striking people out, but ground ball machine and just run prevention machine. And so Logan Webb, very good and kind of as expected. Jordan Hicks, probably the best story on the pitching side. I mean, definitely the best story for the Giants on the pitching side. 67 innings, 13 starts, 2.82 ERA. I'm not sure you could ask for I'm not sure we could have hoped for anything better out of Jordan Hicks. Career low walk rate of just 8.2%. I want to say that's better than league average. And this is a guy who's historically struggled with throwing strikes. Ground ball rate is way above average, better than average, gets the ball on the ground. Like Logan Webb, not a strikeout guy, different type of arsenal, more of a power arsenal, but sinkers and sweepers and a splitter. And it's just been a very effective mix for Jordan Hicks for the most part. And he's been a very pleasant surprise. Not that we didn't think he could do it, but beyond that, like, they haven't gotten great performance out of Kyle Harrison. He has an ERA of 4.18. Last year it was 4.15. And so overall in his major league career now, we're talking he's thrown over 100 innings, just barely 20 starts, 4.17 ERA. So I think he's the type of guy, he's 22 years old. He'll turn 23 in August. But, I wouldn't consider his development done. He's gonna be one of these guys who continues to develop at the major league level. But overall, it's been more mediocre like results, if not a little worse than average results. But, so if he's just kind of hanging out at the back end of your rotation as a young guy developing, then that's great. But if you need him to be like a number 2 or 3 starter, then maybe he's a little bit out of place in that role. So, Blake Snell, we'll talk, he's probably next to talk about. It's just been kind of a disastrous first season in terms of results when he's been on the mound, but also the 2 injuries. I mean, the same injury twice. He's only made 6 starts and has an ERA of 9.5 in those 6 starts. So that is a big kind of negative storyline this season so far. I discussed, I think, yesterday that, if he ends up opting in for next year, it's not like I'm disappointed about that, because he is still Blake Snell and he's been one of the better pitchers in the league for a long time. And I would expect him to be better next year. And I would expect him to be better when he comes back off the injured list eventually this year. So, but for sure, I mean, his absence and then poor performance has definitely contributed to them being 3 games under 500, when the hope was that he would be a legit kind of maybe even frontline ace type starter for the Giants. But instead, he's got an ERA of 9.5 and has been very hurt. Keaton Winn had an ERA of 6.17 as a starter. I think, he's only made starts. And so that's not very good when he was out there, and he's close to coming back. He's another one of these guys I expect to be better once he's back. But, and Mason Black, 7.71 ERA. Dalton Jeffries, 1 start, ERA was 22.5, so yeah. And then some relievers, they've done some opening a little bit. Eric Miller, Ryan Walker, those guys have done well, actually, in that role. Eric Miller, ERA of 1.93 as a starter. Ryan Walker, 1 inning, 1 start, didn't allow a run. So, it is what it is. So coming up next, we'll talk about the relievers, kind of Camilo Doval's worst season so far, I think. And we'll get into the Giants defense. So all of that is coming up in just a minute. And before we get into it, today's episode is brought to you in part by our good friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members, including me. It is the most fun, exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. With Prize Picks, you can turn $10 into 1,000 in a single game, watching your favorite sports, baseball, presumably, this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds or less. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. And it is available to play in California. You can see right here on my phone, if you're looking on YouTube, that I have 2 players locked in for tonight's game. Entry fee of $20 to win 100 on these 2 picks. Jorge Soler, I'm taking more than half an RBI. So the home run he hit and the rocket he hit to third with the bases loaded, I'm just betting on Jorge Soler being locked in and picking up an RBI tonight. And then Michael Conforto, more than 1.5 total bases. So I'm just banking on maybe he hits a double or a homer or something, and $20 entry fee to win 100 on those 2. So that's what I'm going with for tonight. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, here we go. We're going to talk about the Giants relievers and their defense. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, on Monday, we will be breaking down the Giants series in Texas. This is the defending World Series champion Texas Rangers they're playing, but at the same time, they haven't had the best start to the season. And you've got Logan Webb going in game 1, so hopefully the Giants can kind of ride the momentum of their series or win in the series finale in Arizona and play better here. Their road record has been a big part of their struggles this season. They're 13-19 on the road. They're 5-17 against teams that are currently at or above 500. That's the Rangers are not at or above 500, so but they're 6-4 in their last 10, and they're 15-15 at home. I don't know. They have a positive run differential, whereas the Giants have a negative 28 run differential. Anyway, getting into the relievers, I think it's important to discuss them. I think that they've been a big part. Like, it's not like the starters and the relievers have kind of equally struggled, but there have been good performance, just like with Logan Webb and Jordan Hicks. There's like a lot of good going on with the Giants relievers, but at the same time, their overall numbers aren't very good. So the Giants ERA as a relief core is 24th. I think that's right around exactly where the Giants starters were. And they've allowed a 305 batting average on balls in play, which is fourth highest. Their strand rate is 22nd. So it's not entirely clear why there's this big gap between the ERA and the kind of expected numbers based on the peripherals. So kind of diving in terms of ERA, Spencer Howard has done a nice job in 8 2/3 innings. Taylor Rogers, actually, in terms of guys who have eaten up a lot of innings out of the pen, has the best ERA of 2.63. Tyler Rogers at 2.70 with an expected ERA of 2.70. So that's always fun when those align exactly. Sean Jelly has been one of the better kind of surprises of the season out of the bullpen, coming in with an ERA of 2.77, expected ERA of 3.07. Has struggled with the home run ball at times, allowing 1.73 home runs per 9. That's just way too high. That's one of those numbers that takes a really long time to stabilize. Ryan Walker, to me, like, has closer stuff. It's just 2 pitches. But at the same time, what he did last year and what he's doing this year, ERA 2.90, fielding independent pitching 2.24. This is what I'm saying. There's we're talking multiple guys with ERAs in the 2s, and yet they're like 24th or whatever in ERA. Why is that? Well, Dalton Jeffries and Mason Black each have pitched 2 2/3 innings out of the bullpen and allowed a ton of runs, each with ERAs of 13.5. Mitch White, 5 1/3 innings out of the pen, ERA of 11.81. Kai-Wei Tang, 11 innings out of the pen, ERA of almost 10. Tyler Fitzgerald counts here with 3 innings and an ERA of 9. Nick Avila, 11 2/3, ERA of 8.5. And Luke Jackson, 17 innings, ERA of 6.35. But expected kind of numbers, peripheral numbers, better than that for both Avila and Jackson. Landon Roop was a disappointment when he was here, ERA of 5.27 in 13 2/3 innings. And how about this? Camilo Doval, 23 1/3 innings, ERA 4.24, expected ERA 4.14, fielding independent pitching 4.42, expected fielding independent pitching 3.60. And the walks have been a big problem. I look at that walk number, and that's just what jumps off the page. So Doval comes in with a walk rate of 15.6%. His career walk rate is 10.4%. So more than 5 percentage points higher than his career walk rate. And that's basically been the story, I think, of mostly like you're just walking too many guys there. And that leads to traffic on the bases and trouble. And he's blown some games. And I've even considered hey, if you had to make a change, I wouldn't, Ryan Walker, either of Tyler Rogers, Randy Rodriguez, these guys are options because they have performed really well. Randy Rodriguez, maybe even more so than Sean Jelly, or at least equally, has been a really big bright spot out of the bullpen in 18 2/3 innings, 3.38 ERA with expected numbers even lower than that in the mid to high 2s. Eric Miller has done some solid work as well with an ERA of 3.72 and expected ERA 3.23. And yeah, his strikeout rate is really good. Walks a little bit of an issue. Ground ball rate really high, 58%. So Eric Miller looks like kind of a stud. Throws upper 90s from the left side with a changeup and a good slider as well. So that's the breakdown of the relievers. So quickly moving on to the defense. Tyro Estrada leading the team once again in outs above average. Outs above average is a StatCast metric. It does not count catchers. I did go into the details on Patrick Bailey yesterday. Suffice it to say, Bailey is one of the best framers and one of the best like throwers in baseball. And then like I said, he's doing well offensively. And if you put those two combined and you add health, he's just a super, super valuable player. But Estrada was one of the best defenders in baseball by outs above average last year, and he's doing it again this year. So a lot of value there for Thairo Estrada. Nick Ahmed, second on the team, even though he's missed a lot of time, with 4 outs above average. So I think given Luciano is hurt, given Casey Schmidt is actually last on this list in terms of outs above average, and we saw it the other day in Arizona, just kind of kicking the ball around at the shortstop position. Maybe shortstop's just not for him, but Nick Ahmed, I think, even though he wasn't hitting, was just providing a lot of value defensively and stabilizing that shortstop position. Wade Jr. doing a good job at first base, plus 2 outs above average. Heliot Ramos, plus 2 outs above average. Austin Slater, Wilmer Flores, who's underrated as a defender at first. He gets a bad reputation for his defense, but to me, he's always been good at first. He's just not good anywhere else. And then, solid, mediocre performance from Mike Yastrzemski, Jung-Hoo Lee, Matt Chapman. They've got at 0 outs above average. I think he had some bad plays, but he's also had some spectacular plays, and maybe that equates to average, but you see the elite potential a lot of the time, like almost on a regular basis with Chapman. And then on the negative side of things is Matos, Luciano, Conforto, and Schmidt, all at 3 or 4 outs of negative 3 or 4 outs above average in various level, amounts of playing time, essentially. But all in all, I guess I probably should have led with this. All in all, the Giants as a team, and again, this is not counting catchers, are 10th best with plus 7 outs above average. So they've been an above average offensive team, an above average hitting team, but the pitching, both starters and relievers, in the bottom 5-ish. So that's kind of been, it hasn't always looked that way. It's at times been the offense that's been the problem or whatever. But if you look at overall, they've just allowed a lot of runs is essentially what it's come down to. And it hasn't been the defense's fault. It's just been the pitching and guys like Blake Snell, I guess, contributing to that. So anyway, there's your breakdown. And that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every day is on Monday, breaking down this series in Texas. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot, so thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again on Monday. Have a great weekend. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.